Welcome to Better Worlds Ocean, where we dive into discussions on cutting-edge technology, data-driven solutions, and groundbreaking innovations aimed at tackling oceanic challenges. Join us as we ride the crest of a new era in global sustainability and work together to preserve our oceans for generations to come.
Welcome back to Better Worlds podcast series, where we are diving into ocean issues and how you can get involved in this next wave of ocean data technology and innovation. Today, we're really expanding our idea that the ocean is connected to everything and connecting with Stephanie O'Donnell with Wild Labs. Now, Wild Labs is not exclusively about the oceans, but it's about all kinds of conservation technology, and it's a community that brings together people working at all levels with anything related to conservation tech, remote, low tech, high tech, AI, everything in between. And oceans are definitely a thread of Wild Labs. So I'm glad to have Stephanie with us today to talk about what it's like to build a community that's connecting around how to build these new tools to help us capture the information we need to make the smart decisions about conservation and preservation of our natural world. So Stephanie, welcome. You're joining us from the UK, where it's lovely and sunny today.
It is. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, tell me a little bit about how Wild Labs got started and how you got your role in this community.
Let's go back to the very beginning. Wild Labs was formed in 2015 as it came out of a collaboration between some of the world's biggest conservation NGOs, including WWF, Fauna and Flora International, Wildlife Conservation Society, and Conservation International, among a coalition. And they came together and saw this need to create a space where conservationists who are using technology could find each other and just talk and share knowledge and be able to ask questions about, oh, how are you using technology? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Can I learn from you? Because it sounds ridiculous to say that this sort of space didn't exist before Wild Labs. At that stage, if you were trying to use technology, and this was in my experience as well, because I'm a wildlife ecologist by background. And I remember using camera traps and using radio collars and having to learn by trial by error, and learn from if you had people in your lab or in your network who'd used technologies, maybe you could speak to them, but there was no place you could go and just ask a community of experts, what tools should I use? This is my situation. This is the animal I'm trying to study. What options are available? So really at its heart, the goal was to create a space where the global conservation community could come and talk and share knowledge about technology. And as we've grown since then, the role has, as the community's grown and evolved and matured, we've become more and more focused on finding ways to capture the challenges that we're facing as a community, and then finding ways to build bridges out to other sectors and other communities to come and collaborate with us and help find the solutions to those challenges. So really our role now has evolved a lot towards finding collaborations with the tech sector, with academia, with engineers and designers, and finding ways to build those pathways into conservation, and so that we have more people than just conservationists in the field working on these issues and innovating and developing new technologies for applications for biodiversity and to save the planet, right? And your other question was, how did I get my role? Yeah, I had this experience as a field conservationist, having this experience of I was working with critically endangered species called northern quolls in Australia, and I remember going and having to purchase collars to monitor these animals as they were released after they were captive bred, released into the wild, and we wanted to find out where they were going. And each of those collars, I remember, was more than $1,000 a collar, and they'd only they'd give us data for like a week at the most. And to get that data back, we had to find the collars, and these animals like run up these crevices, and like it's hard to get the collars back. And like it just struck me as insane. Like it's so hard to get and expensive to get data that we need to monitor and protect and understand critically endangered species, and yet at the same time I had an iPhone in my back pocket, and that was half the cost of one collar. And so the separation between what I'm able to access as a consumer versus someone who's working on a critically endangered species was just mind-boggling to me. And I just thought that there had to be a better way. So when this opportunity came up to come in and build and grow this community that tried to bring these two worlds together and put better hands in the tools of conservationists, like, of course, like how could I say no to that opportunity? Like it just connecting to something real that answers a real need, like it's a dream job. So yeah, that's how I got into this role 8 years ago.
Fantastic. I think that, your experience with that, when you first realized you had to get this technology to get the information you needed about this endangered quoll, someone told you where to buy the collars, or are you on the web going, collar that fits small mammal of X size? Like what, how do you even go about that?
Nothing fit the quoll. Like it's like the size of a small cat. Go look it up if no one knows what I'm talking about. They're very cute, quite bitey. That's all Australian animals. But no, I was like fresh out of uni. Actually, fresh out of uni, and like it was the advice of my supervisors. Like, okay, we should go and get a Surtrack collar. So go and look at this, and you have to kind of, even now it's a little bit like that. You kind of have to find your way down the rabbit holes to, okay, I'll get this collar, and then, okay, it arrives. It doesn't fit my animal. Okay, I ended up constructing my own collars and attaching the tracking device to the collars so that it would actually fit the quoll necks, and then still even not ideal. There's a lot of work that happens about, like, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, attachment of devices to animals is a rabbit hole you can go down.
Right. And that is one of the beautiful things about Wild Labs is that you can get on there and say, oh, yeah, I need to attach this thing to a turtle, right? And people are like, well, this suction cup, or this is the glue.
Yeah.
I mean, people have really thought about these ideas, and you're coming in realizing you need to do this research because you're a student, you're an academic researcher, or you work with a company that's trying to figure out how to innovate and create this tech,
totally,
or trying to do a project, and you need to do this kind of monitoring around it. And it can be very isolating because you're the only person sitting there going, okay, what sticks to this kind of animal fur that doesn't disturb the animal, that I can get certified by whatever government agency is protecting the animal. It's like, I'm not hurting the animal by sticking this thing on it. And so Wild Labs creates that space where you don't ever have to feel shy about saying, look, I actually have no idea really what I'm doing here. I just know I need to get pictures of this thing. Where do I get started? And people will just jump right in the forums and say, oh, hey, well, I did this with this, or I did this with this. And it's a really collaborative space that you've created there. And I think that's, that's intentional, right? It's a registered space. There's moderation, there's rules and codes of conduct too. So I think that is one thing that you've clearly put a lot of thought into, is how do we create a space that fosters this kind of collaboration and not competition?
Totally. And well, we could get into collaboration versus competition. I think they, like in a healthy environment, they both live. But starting first with community building, it is an incredibly intentional process, and not one that I necessarily and my team stumbled upon by trial and error. Though there was a lot of trial and error. Like our team talks often about the best part of our job is that we get to listen to our community. We're always listening, and then designing programs that respond to what our community needs. And we're continuously evolving based on what is needed in this moment from our community, whether that's the sort of events we put on, or the research that we're doing, or the collaborations we're helping form, or the resources that we're helping pour into our community and make available. And so in terms of in terms of community building, setting up that sort of intentionality from the start was really important. Like, we launched with community guidelines straight away. It was fully my advice to anyone starting a community is to don't underestimate how much work it takes behind the scenes, and that I think there was sort of an expectation from some of the partners who helped launch Wild Labs that we'd build it, it would grow, and then it would just become self-sustaining, and everything would be wonderful and it would need less work, when actually the opposite is true. You need more and more as your community evolves. And one of the most useful things I found, or I was led to in the early stages of the community, was there's been a lot of research into the stages that a community goes through as it evolves. And there are some pretty standard, predictable life cycle stages that your community should move through. And more importantly, as importantly, the activities you're doing as a community builder and a community manager will change based on what your life stage your community is at. And so there's a book called Buzzing Communities. I'm happy to, I'll drop in a link, which you can share if people are interested in this sort of thing. But in the inception stage of the first stage of your community, it's very much about building trust and going one person by one person, bringing them together and establishing these norms of behavior and trust within your community about how the community is operating and how people are interacting with each other. And that's really where you can embed this idea of collaboration over competition, or creating space for collaboration in hand with competition. And how people are supposed to interact with each other, and you can do that even just within a single event, not just in an online community. And I will say also that the Wild Labs platform, wildlabs.net, where we have all our forums and have all the resources and have this central hub, is just the central hub of our community. I kind of think about community as existing in a trellis of spaces, and we go where our community exists and where they want to congregate. So our community exists on Wild Labs, but it also exists in all of the events that we host, whether they're virtual or in person. It also exists on Twitter and LinkedIn and on YouTube. So we have a very flexible view of what our community is, and it's a lot bigger than what's just happening in the forums. The forums are almost just the signpost, the place to just find your way into the community that is way more vibrant and exists in all these different places. I'm going off on a tangent about communities, but in going back to community stages, in the first stage, it's very intentional, and you're doing it person by person, bringing them into the community and setting up these interactions. And then as you mature, I remember feeling it should happen within 9 months, that your community will flip over and the activity will start just kind of happening, and it just will start taking off. And I remember it happening, I was oh, something's changed in the community. It seems to have people are just kind of getting it, and people are just starting to join the community without me having to go and talk to them and bring them in and hold their hand the whole way through. And at that stage, when your community's in this kind of emerging phase, your activities start to change to creating sort of a culture in your community and starting to create programs and spaces for your community to meet. And this is where we started doing things like our virtual meetups and creating these virtual calls where our community could congregate, meet each other and interact, and have this sort of oh, I'm not alone. There's this, I can ask all of these people, and if I come to one of these events, I'll find 200 people using the same tool as me, and I can just get in the chat and ask questions and learn from this person. And suddenly it feels oh, okay, yes, we're in this together, and maybe we could it's not just me trying to have these struggles with this tool. Everyone's having this struggle with this tool. So maybe actually as a collective, we could do something about it. And then as you get more and more mature, you can, at that stage, that's when our role started to shift, and we started doing these big research projects and doing our big state of conservation tech, where we really helped our community articulate how tools are performing for them right now, and where they see the state of the field going, and how they need the technology to evolve and adapt and innovate to actually meet their needs. And I think this is where our job gets just so interesting, helping as quite a neutral actor in many ways. Our job is just, as a community organizer, is just such a service role in terms of we're here to help everyone succeed. And if we can help our community identify areas and then go use our networks to bring people in and bring funding and opportunities in to respond to those needs, we can just be this enabling body that if everyone succeeds, we succeed, right? But yes, that's community.
I think this,
community
I mean,
theory,
I think
right?
that you say that's a tangent, but I think this discussion about community building is really essential to a lot of these areas where we need to do more work to scale the types of solutions for conservation and climate change and ocean issues and any other, natural world issue that we're looking at, because it is these nested cycles, right? It's who you're working with on the day-to-day, on a regular basis, out there, checking your traps, checking your tags, downloading your data, processing it, visualizing it, communicating it. You've got this kind of local, immediate community that you have to foster, but you need to take advantage of these global connections that we can have now to learn from people in East Africa or Australia or Malaysia who are saying, oh, I'm doing this with this animal, but it's a very similar challenge that I'm having with this data, or a very similar challenge I'm having with this policy issue too. I mean, one of the projects I was most involved with through wildlabs.net was a group of people writing a paper on ethics of conservation AI. And that meant they had to get into things like data localization policies and which countries would allow you to store camera trap data on a cloud server, and which said you actually have to keep it in the country because we have a localization law that says data of this type cannot leave our country borders. So all of these interesting aspects came together where people were exploring this, and they wrote a paper about it together and published it based on conversations on wildlabs.net. And there were all of these aspects as people were talking about it together where they thought, oh, I never thought about that. And I'm not actually sure what applies where I am. Maybe I should check that out. Maybe I should expand my community to reach out to this other community nearby and make more and more of these connections that are just going to make that information sharing stronger.
I think the important thing is also that it's not a collaboration and relationship with community is not something that's formed in a single point in time. It's actually the culmination of multiple interactions in different form, in different spaces, and building, I really think it's actually just about relationships and trust and liking other people, and finding areas of commonality. And we've always been led by people first, not organizations. That's why if you join Wild Labs, you can have your organization on your profile, but we care about you as an individual and what you think and what your challenges are, and the path that you're taking throughout, maybe at different organizations and different projects, but it's about people connecting and finding ways to work together. And I think, we've seen a lot of, I think it takes, if you take a long view, you can see people cycle in and out of the community as they need it, and as their roles change and as their challenges change, and those sort of relationships and what they're getting from the community change as well. Like, it might just be getting an answer on a forum and saying, okay, what camera trap do I need to use, or what biologger, or how should I attach it to this animal? And incidentally, since we're talking about attaching biologgers to marine animals, my favorite fact is that peanut butter is the magic sauce for getting suction cups to attach to manta rays. Yeah, I know. I just needed to throw that in there. Thanks, Alistair.
I also love that this means that there were a bunch of researchers out there, like with jars of condiments, saying, "Okay, sit still, manta ray. Let me try this ketchup. Let me try this mustard. Oh no, those aren't working. Peanut butter,
Peanut butter. Who would have thought? Still,
I hope that that doesn't attract their predators. That their predators aren't like, finally, this manta ray seems tasty.
Look, I feel like you should get Alistair Davies on as a follow-up to talk specifically about
I would happily talk to Alistair Davies about manta rays any day. We'll just put this out there right now. Alistair, if you're watching, come talk to us about peanut buttering manta rays. But in any event, back to attaching things.
but back to, so actually, Alistair's a great example. He and I are good friends, and like, so many of the relationships I and like people we collaborate with in Wild Labs are just people where the conversation has been, it's like an ongoing conversation. It's like sharing ideas and sharing, oh, what are you working on? Or what your challenges? Oh, I also had that. And then you suddenly find your way to a project where you can actually work together at a deeper level, and then that finishes. And I think this view of community as an evolving relationship and collaborative force takes it to a point where it's way more powerful than just getting a couple of Q&A answers, like questions answered, and finding a better way of doing something. It really can be a pathway into really deep collaborative partnerships and really powerful innovation opportunities.
And the State of the Conservation Tech Field report that you talked about, I also think is a really powerful product that Wild Labs has created. And I want to highlight that because one of the things we've been talking about in this series of podcasts is how can people get involved? Like, where's the opportunity for you to jump in and get involved in this work? And we definitely have people watching who are trying to design new technologies, new software platforms, get involved from the tech side. And that report is basically a survey of all of these people using all of these different tools and technologies and saying, this is what we need more of. This is what isn't working. This is where our challenges are. Can you say more a little bit about how you framed up that report and came up with the questions, and if you're going to do another one?
So, right, I said that like our job is to listen to our community. I'm like, I take that so because it informs everything we do. And so the very start of that was like back when we began, since the first year, we've done an annual survey and asked questions about, okay, like, yes, how's Wild Labs working for you? How can we serve you better? What do you need? What programs, like what's working, what's not? But I've always added in like this section of like, and how's technology working for you? Like, what do you think about the field? Like, where do you think it's going in 5 years? What should we all be doing together? Just because, like, I'm curious. And we we were getting really interesting results from that. And for a long time, I was like, oh, I really would love to do a state of conservation tech. I just think it would be so interesting. We just don't have capacity. And then COVID hit, and one of our amazing team members had gone to do a master's program, and she was still Talia Speaker. She was still working with us, and so she was due to go to Kenya and do some conservation tech project for a master's, and she couldn't travel, and so she needed a new project. And I was like, Talia, we've got all that survey data. Would you be interested in maybe turning it into a state of conservation tech? And she like. Yeah, she ran with it, and had, because she was at Colorado State University, we had an amazing group of supervisors that were involved in her program, and our so Wild Labs is led by overseen by a steering group of the tech leads of all the conservation organizations in our partnership. So we had them involved in the oversight of this project, and we took this survey from being an annual, hey, well, how's Wild Labs going? And here are some questions about the conservation world, and kind of turned it around. And Talia led it, building out the questions we're asking about the state of the field in terms of the different technology areas, and going deeper and formulating questions that were targeted at tech users, but also the tech developers. And we also designed this research project that had the survey data, and then we triangulated the findings by hosting these invite-only focus groups with 50 experts from across the field in 7 different areas of conservation technology. And we took them through a conversation about the strengths and weaknesses about their area, and the opportunities and threats are looking to the future. And it's really interesting. In every single one of those conversations, I love a focus group. Like, what an unparalleled delight to sit with like 10 experts and just ask them where they see the field going. Like, and they all love it as well. Like, when do you get the chance to sit with your peers and like talk about where you see everything going? It's great. But without fail, all of those conversations, yes, we can focus on battery life, size, readiness for the field, like all the stuff we know that technology in conservation needs to answer and improve on in the short term. But without fail, all of them were really more interested in talking about the big picture stuff of where the field could go in 5-10 years. And a lot of the conversation turned to not like technology specific things, but actually the state of the field in terms of collaboration and how we all work together and how we work with other sectors and what's needed to, like, the idea of like a NASA for conservation came up so often and has come up so often since then as well, of like, we need this, like, as one person articulated, it's like, our challenges are no less complicated than the radio astronomers face, but they have all of these extra layers. So why are they getting so much investment and time and like have all of these collaborative infrastructures to support all of these different fields working together, and we don't? And how do we change that? And so it's fascinating. And so if you want to read more about that, Talia and the whole team and all of the people who inputted to it did an amazing job capturing the vision of our where our field could go coming through from our community. And it really does speak to the importance of not just the importance, but like how collaborative people are in our space and how willing they are to work with each other and be generous with data and like be generous with knowledge and time and like, there's just a lot of really nice people trying really hard on challenges that are really, really complicated. But the other thing is, so will we do another state of conservation tech? Yes, we collect the data each year. So we've got survey data year on year. And so we want to turn it into a longitudinal mapping of how the sector changes and how the challenges change. So I think we're coming up on year 4 or 5, no, 3 or 4, don't know. Yes, I think we'll do probably another focus group thing, maybe year 5, and see how things have changed. But the other thing we're doing in the meantime is, so State of Conservation Tech looked at everything we do, like AI to biologging to camera trapping to remote sensing, terrestrial, aquatic, marine, all applications. And that's big. It's like it's a lot. But now we're looking at doing these. We've just finished a horizon scan looking at the field of movement ecology, which is a little smaller, but also pretty big as well. And looking at, we did a similar exercise, but focused on a horizon scan framework where you basically, where we've asked, we got together all the experts in some public forums and then some private focus groups again, and basically have asked them and worked with them to have a look at where the field could go in the immediate future, where investment is needed to move the field forward in terms of like, what can we solve with brute force in like the next 3-5 years, like whether that's just putting a heap of money in, like time, like we know how to get there. And then looking further afield of like, okay, where could we go 5-10 years down the line, and what investment is needed right now to build to that vision. And when you look on the 10-year horizon, it's once again looking at these really large-scale collaborative endeavors and the collaborative infrastructure we need, whether it's to solve questions around like large-scale tracking of animals or different statistical methods. And to be clear, when we talk about technology, it's not just hardware. I know we keep talking about biologgers. That's my bad. But like, it's also software and remote sensing, and like it's actually I would say that conservation technology is more about data than it is hardware now. The focus like 5 years ago used to be on, okay, how do we get the information? Like, it's so expensive, it's so hard to collect the information that we need. And now I think the tide is turning, and what we're getting access to cheaper tools and better remote sensed data. Now the question is, okay, how do we make sense of all of this, and how can we leverage AI and different analytical techniques to give us insights that we can actually then respond to? I'm going off on a tangent. Wait, so back to the state of conservation tech. What we're doing, I think we're building this we're following our curiosity, one, but we're building this program of ways in which we can help our community articulate challenges that then we can give to other people and say, okay, yes, we all know this is a challenge. Like any conservationist who reads the State of Conservation Tech will not be surprised. Like we all know these are the issues, but having it in a format that's not just like 5 people sitting in a room saying, hey, these are the issues, but saying this is community sourced. We asked everyone and this is what they all agreed that the challenges are. And same again for the movement ecology, having a list of priorities or areas that are where innovation is needed or just challenges articulated is one of the biggest challenges and barriers to actually working with other sectors, like articulating things in a way that other people can pick up and reply to, and like giving them a roadmap to saying, okay, you want to get involved, here's how you can get involved, is like incredibly powerful. And I can't.
And now you have that roadmap, and maybe we can get more people engaged and excited by that roadmap and get that version of NASA for the planet, looking back at it to help us connect all of these critical data sources and data points and people who are making the change and collecting that information on the ground and in the water. As we wrap up our session today, I know you don't want to pick favorites, but is there anything popping on maybe you do? Maybe you're like, I'm going to pick some favorites. I like competition. Is there anything popping up on wildlabs.net that you're particularly delighted by or excited about, kind of like peanut buttering a manta ray, a novel technology or an adorable animal or an amazing new data visualization?
What? How do I pick a favorite? And it's also hard because like some of the things I'm most excited about are programs we're leading, which seems like a bit like tooting our own trumpet to say like we're doing some cool stuff. I think
you can talk about your own programs.
Thank you. No, so one of the things I'm most excited about is one of the things that came through, then we know this, is that there is not gender balance in the conservation tech world. And like we run a lot of events and a lot of spaces, and we work so hard to get gender balance throughout and feature a lot of women who are doing amazing work in conservation tech. But it's like it's hard, and it's it's been so encouraging and delightful to see like how the number of projects and the number of women, particularly in the last few years, leading conservation tech projects and bringing more diversity into our space. And but yeah, one of the projects where we're really excited about is our Women in Conservation Tech program, which began in East Africa last year, and it's a 6-month training program for early career. In the first year, it was in Kenya, early career Kenyan women. We brought 15 women together for 2 workshops and 6 months of training, and it was the most awesome experience. And like our cohort of women were just incredible. And when we say early career, it's not that they're we have a loose definition for early career. It was early career in conservation technology. So we had a lot of very experienced women, but who were entering the conservation tech world. So seeing how they just like sprinted with the resources there and the training that we were able to support them with, and the mentorship that program brought together was incredible. And we're this week just about to go through and start selecting, go through the applications for this year's cohort, which we hosted in Tanzania. And I can't wait to see who's going to be joining us this year. And I think programs like that and seeing more voices and more people and more diversity of experiences and ideas and people doing different things, joining the conversation. Like I remember going to many events where the same 10 people would turn up a couple of years ago, and now that is changing and the conversations are becoming more open and involving more people. And I just think that is the most exciting part of how conservation tech is changing at the moment, just for me. And I think we're better for it, and we're getting better innovation and better projects and partnerships happening because more and more people are joining us. And so that was a really lame answer. I wish I had another manta ray story, but
I think it's a fantastic answer. It's a great program, and it's exciting to see that it's continuing, and maybe we can find a way to have an ocean special version of that in the coming years.
They would like oceans people. So when we do marine focused events, like the marine people show up as a community and are so lively and so engaged. Like we always are a little bit taken aback by how they show up. So I think having a marine focus would be really. We had one in particular. I'm thinking of Sue, who does a lot of marine work, and her project was all around kelp forests. So it's not just terrestrial, but having a marine focus would be really interesting. Yeah, one to throw in the mix.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Stephanie, and a call out to anybody who wants us to help fund our NASA for the Conservation Tech Planet. And we'll see you on the next Better Worlds Ocean podcast.